Hello, welcome to Footsteps of the Past. Today you join me for the story of the Admiral, James Aldred. James was born in Sleep around 1846 and was of a farming family. James, at the age of 15, 16, decided he'd had enough of the farming life, and the sea beckoned him. James, one August morning, upon deciding he'd had enough, waited for the farmer to be at the other end of the field. He then drew up his horses and plough, jumped through the hedge, down onto the single track railway line, and walked into Petersfield. James tried to buy a ticket for Portsmouth, but did not have enough money. So he brought a half fare to Hampshire and walked the rest of the way. James arrived in Portsmouth late afternoon, early evening, and couldn't sign up at that point. So made himself busy and found things to do in Portsmouth before probably sleeping rough somewhere. The next morning, James signed up as a ship's boy on HMS Victory, which at the time was still floating, but was a training ship. In an interview which I will be taking bits from during this video, James recalled the pride that he felt serving on Nelson's flagship. And consequently, in 2004-2005, I worked on HMS Victory as event staff. But it isn't about me, it isn't about James. So I have here an interview with James taken around 1932 for a local Hampshire paper. Early one August morning, Jim Aldred, the 16-year-old ploughboy, gone to the land near Petersfield to help the farmers. James later in the day abandoned his plough and horses to make his way to Portsmouth, which I have just explained. There on board HMS Victory, then a training establishment for boys, anchored out in the harbour, he joined the Royal Navy. At the time of this interview, James was a very active and cheery octogenarian. He was well known for miles around as the Admiral of Petersfield, and the story of his promotion to flag rank will be cherished by inhabitants of the town long after Jim told his last yarn and sipped his last tot of rum. James Aldred was no ordinary admiral. When he left the service and decided to spend his retirement in Petersfield, his popularity in the town soon earned him the title of the captain. He continued to serve in this captaincy role for a good number of years, and then what appeared to be general consensus at Petersfield, he was promoted to commander. It's only recently, in this interview, James explained his present status. So this interview is around 32, as local journalists, local papers had heard of the Admiral at Petersfield, and they wanted to go and look at this story of him. So, here we go. Jim is an old salt who never seems to lose his saviour, and his yarns of the Navy of old have been the talk of the town for years. It would be interesting to find out how many naval ventures and boasts as Jim Aldred could at the time. So training on Nelson's flagship was one of James's fondest and greatest memories. So he ran away and signed up. You know, him and some of the boys used to meet under a tree on the way to working on the farm. And a few of them would, you know, do we continue today? Or do we run? Do we run away? James for a while did continue until he'd had enough. So back to the story of James. So he said that he found it a hard life in the Navy. Manual labour was harder than the land, and it was very healthy. After he'd been in the Navy for a year, his auntie and uncle said they would buy him out. He thought about it for a while before saying no. I ran away from my work. I will stop where I am, thank you, he replied. As soon as they had gone, he went down to the bottom of the ship and cried. In this interview, James described life in the Navy. You know, he said that's when the Navy was the Navy. And, you know, he served on many ships, HMS Revenge. And he was only on the Victory for about 3 weeks before being transferred to the HMS Duke of Wellington, which, from my research, was at least double the size of the Victory. So he went all around the Mediterranean, on what he was calling the Atlantic Fleet, picking up a 18-year-old King of Greece, as his father had just died, to take him to Athens to be installed as the new King of Greece. Jim also said that in the Navy, everything was double time. You know, you didn't walk, you ran. Which in today's world of health and safety wouldn't be possible. And certainly on HMS Victory, having worked there myself, it is very difficult to run around that ship without hitting your head. I did quite a few times. So James also tells a story of a flogging incident. This sailor was moving very slowly along the deck, and the officer noticed him and pushed him over. Not James, the other sailor. and this other sailor face planting onto the deck. When they helped him up, he left 2 of his teeth embedded into the deck. And that is a story that James regaled his children and family with all through the rest of his days. And of course, people in the pub. So, James married and lived on the Isle of Wight during his service, and was on a yard ship, a naval guard ship just off the Isle of Wight, and most of his children were born on the Isle of Wight. Upon retiring, James moved back to Petersfield to Sheep Street, into a half-timbered house. Photos of James's house and other pictures regarding him will be added to this video. James then used to go up to what I believe was the Royal Oak, that is now the Black Sheep, which was probably a 50-yard walk from his house. In 1933, James passed away. He was 87 years old. His funeral was held in St. Peter's Church in the town, and he was brought up here to Petersfield Cemetery and buried. Sadly, there is no grave markings, but from plans and maps, I am 20 yards away from James's grave. James had 10 children that he knows of, and I say that because in the interview, when asked how many children he had, his daughter, who was with him at the time, when James said, "Oh, I know I've got 10, but I wouldn't be able to tell you if there's any more." To which his daughter said, "Oh, probably 15 or 16, and he was like, "Aye, probably that." So, he was a bit of a character. And he used to go up to, like I say, the Royal Oak, sitting there having a tot of rum, regaling the locals with his stories in the Navy. One I read earlier was about a flogging. If you weren't moving quick enough, you got flogged, and sometimes 20, 30, 40 flogs. The boatswain would start off doing 10, and then somebody else would do another 10, and so on. And if they weren't deemed to be being done hard enough, the captain would take them on. What are you? Are you a naval officer? Do your work. So James, what did I make of him? When I first read his story, I found it highly amusing. Not in a funny ha-ha way, but in a lovely, genuine way of almost reading what he was like as a character. He sounded like a very cheeky, very much a twinkle in his eye, sense of humour. So, that brings the story of James Aldred to an end. I was hoping today to record outside HMS Victory, but when I got there at 7 o'clock this morning, all the gates were shut. Now, that wasn't the case when I worked there 20 odd years ago, and also the Victory is having a lot of work done on it at the moment. So thank you very much. Your time taken to watch this is much appreciated. Join me very soon for the next one. And remember, no one knows where their history will take them. Thank you. Goodbye.